And welcome. My name is Professor Ricky Ramon, and I am a faculty member in the Department of Theater Arts. Thank you for joining us for Howard University's Division of Fine Arts and Woolly Mammoth Theater Company's SpotLight series. Today's lecture will be conversation will be on the future is female. I want to introduce to you our moderator for today. I'm so excited that she has been in my life. I first met Deirdre at Duke Ellington School of the Performing Arts here in DC. And when I met Deirdre, she welcomed me with open arms. She's a kind human being. She's first a great mother. She's an excellent teacher. And most people in the DC area know her as a award-winning, Helen Hayes award-winning actress. Deirdre is a great example of what it means to be an artist, what it means to be a teaching artist, and what it means to now, in the role that she holds as the Associate Artistic Director at First Stage, what it means to be in the leadership position of a professional theater company. So without further ado, I want this conversation to happen. Let me introduce to you Deirdre Starnes. So join us on the screen, Deirdre.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Ricky, for such a beautiful introduction. I hope I live up to that, but certainly you are in my heart, and as is Eric Ruffin, who is here. And I am so excited to be in the room with multi-hyphenated artist Taylor Reynolds and Leeanet Noble. If you will join me. Thank you so much. When I say that they are multi-hyphenated, it is just that. And what I would love, and we will start with Taylor, is Taylor, for you to share with our audience some of your multi-hyphenations so they get an idea of who you are and what you bring to this table of conversation.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Reynolds. I use she, her, hers pronouns. In case you want to know, I'm coming to you from my apartment in Harlem, New York, also the ancestral lands of the Lenape and Wappinger people. So a little bit about me. I was just telling everyone in my previous introductions on the Zoom that I go by director and theater maker. And what that really means is theater director, producer. I'm also, I'm one of the 5 producing artistic leaders of the Movement Theater Company based in Harlem, which did What to Send Up When It Goes Down at Howard in 2019, which feels like yesterday and a long time ago. And I also am a deviser and a generator, just really working to be a collaborative artist in the truer sense of the word, and redefining what that means for me every day. So in case you care, I've worked with companies like Club Thumb, Signature Theater Company. I've worked with Baltimore Center Stage at the beginning of 2020 last year. And I'm a New Georgia's affiliated artist in New York. And I am a member of SDC, which is the Directors Union. And that's me. Anything else we can figure out later, because you'll ask.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Leeanet.
Yes, Leeanet Noble, she, her, hers. So the hyphens, yes. Director, choreographer, actor, writer, musician, dancer. I am also on senior staff at Shakespeare Theater Company as the Director of Equity and Enrichment. And I'm just open to doing all things creatively and as the energy flows and comes. I am a graduate of the illustrious Howard University from the Department of the Fine Arts, and a legacy of family who went to Howard, my mother in the music department, my grandmother who was in the School of Divinity as well as the music department, and my grandfather who worked there for 40 years. So I'm very proud of my Bison roots. As a performer, I've been in shows like Stomp, Drumstruck by Dodger Theatricals, and yes, Irish Repertory Theater. And as a musician and performer, I've worked with Rihanna, Alicia Keys, Sheryl Crow, many more. As a writer, I was mentored by the Emmy Award winner, Charles S. Dutton, and have had my original plays produced off-Broadway at the Zipper Theater, at 54 Below. Also had original productions at Madison Square Garden and many more. Alongside my mother, I co-direct an internationally critically acclaimed all-female percussive dance troupe called Team Vicious. We are known for taking the Paris Fashion Week runway and stepping down the runway and making history and being inducted to museums all over the world and celebrating women of all sizes. Yes, so I'll stop there. Also enjoying my work with Shakespeare Theater Company. I recently co-directed a star-studded virtual gala, and before that, the Amen Baldwin, the James Baldwin Festival. So excited about that work as well.
Wow, what a plethora of talent from both of our guests. And so the title of this, the topic, the theme of our conversation is "The Future is Female." And I'm gonna start with some things that may deter a little from the artist in you, because certainly we cannot get away from what's going on in our world right now. So one of the questions I have for you is, how are you doing? How are you doing as artists during this incredible time in our history where we are actually watching a history that we never expected to be a part of? How are you doing as women, as artists, as humans right now?
You know, as humans, there is the pandemic side, and I feel like right when it hit, so many friends in New York and different places that were affected by the virus itself. And so there's that end of feeling the energy of a lot of loss that has taken place. Artistically, I think one of the benefits of being multi-hyphenated and having worked in different mediums and things of that sort is that you start thinking outside of the box, where as before, often we're working in these lines and in this way, especially if you're with a theater organization or you have your own company, you're used to working in a certain way, and it really forces you to go back and use that creative energy and find new methods to be creative. And I've seen such amazing work happen out of this time period. And so creatively, I think it's a time to going back to being like that young artist that was like molding and figuring out, how can I break in? How can I do this? How can I maneuver? How can I shift things? And the movement that is sparking with Black Lives Matter, that honestly, we know that these things have been happening, with everybody being forced to stare at it in its face like most of us had been doing. But now that everybody is staring at it in the face, the shifts that are happening as a result of that. So I think in a way it's an exciting time creatively.
Thank you. Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that question. I think I'm appreciative of the check-in. Even though I've been on, multiple calls today that have all thankfully started with the "how you doing?" And it's been a little bit different between 11 a.m. today and, right now. But I think earnestly, honestly, not great, but then who amongst us is generally doing fine? And I have questions, but I really agree with a lot of what Leeanet has said, and the opportunities for engagement, both as activist, as artist, as human person, to just kind of like have a reset in all of our lives, no matter, you know, what paths we're kind of going down. Everybody had to figure out, like, okay, even if my path, even if my like day to day looks exactly the same, something is different because there is a large global thing happening, both in it, or really there's multiple things happening of, you know, oppressive practices and oppressive structures, really having a light shown on them, and also a global pandemic where there's like also supporting, shining the light on the global inequities of our world. And so it's tough to balance that, and then also try to just be a human person, you know, that we've just, you know, like, I've got to wake up. Like, I woke up, if I get out of bed or not, I'm still awake. And I've gone through a really interesting journey in my relationship to my artistry, and to who I am as an artist and what I need as a person first. I was actually just talking to my roommate right before this, about how my life at the beginning of 2021 has been getting back into, you know, regular meetings, and I've got a few projects that I'm working on, and I'm back in kind of like video Zoom rehearsals, whereas at the end of 2020 in November and December, I made a conscious decision to really step back as much as I could. You know, I had to take a few things because unemployment doesn't cover very much. So, but as much as possible, I just needed to take time away from generating and from making, so that I could understand why I was doing it. And it wasn't just survival, that it was something that was, you know, like why I came to theater, of that I get back energetically just as much as I'm giving. And so that's how I'm doing today, is really trying to figure out how I can get back into that space of feeling genuinely excited to create. And thankfully, the things that I'm working on are things that I'm very excited about, rather than like it's, you know, a money job. But there's always that part of me that's a little bit like, remember everything else, and how maybe, I don't know, you should create the vaccine. That's not going to happen. But what I can do is, you know, make the Zoom rooms I'm in the warm and brave spaces that hopefully I think I'm trying to make them.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing that with us. I think it's important for our young.
Oh, sorry, Deirdre. I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Can everyone else hear me?
I can hear you.
All right.
Okay.
I'll try. Is that better?
Yes,
I think
thank
it's
you.
very important for our young artists to understand that it is okay to not be okay, that it is okay to feel, that it is okay to be aware of the things that are happening in the world that are not okay. It is okay. And I think as artists, and what you have certainly shown in the work that you do in the community, and in the theaters that you've chosen to work with the artists you've chosen to work with, and the venues you've chosen to work with, is that then you then take that what's not right in the world, and you create art with it, and you forge a path. And I love the title of this conversation, The Future is Female. Now, we are at, you know, it was the best of times, and it is, you know, it was the worst of times, and it's the best of times, because we see in broad daylight, like in front of everyone's eyes, all kinds of things being shattered. And one of the things that are being shattered is the glass ceiling. Right. And we see women forging and making people aware of what's going on, and the power of their voice. And so what I wanted to talk to you about is this whole concept of what you do, your multi-hyphenated careers, and your life is for such a time as this, and that now is the time. So that as a multi-hyphenated artist, how do you feel yourself fitting into what's happening now? How do you feel your craft, your gift, your artistry is going to forge a path and continue to forge a path for our younger generations to continue to fight the good fight and break those glass ceilings?
Well, I think personally and as an artist, and then also especially through our work at the movement, we are doing our best to, I mean, just by the fact that the movement exists, we run non-hierarchically. So there are 5 of us who run the company on a mostly volunteer basis, mind you. So that's, 5 Black and brown folks volunteering their time. We're working on it. But just by the fact of the way we operate, we are already pushing against a more traditional model of, there being an artistic director, or there being specific departments, or there being weight in more in one corner than another. And so our aim and my aim as, director, collaborator, is to make each space that I operate in as collaborative as possible. And that's both artistically and in focusing on the humans. So that's making sure that people's access needs are being met. That's making sure that we have collective understanding about what time means to us, and that, somebody being 15 minutes late doesn't need to be an issue. Like, why do you need to be on time? Why do we need to be doing this exact thing right here, right now? And addressing some of these like capitalistic structures that, theater was built upon. So we've got to also operate within that, like, mind twirliness. And we are, I are just constantly trying to push ourselves so that we are focusing on creating a better space and a better world and a better field for the most vulnerable people in the room. And just by doing that work, where so many, predominantly white institutions are just releasing their statements of, anti-racism, and they recognize and that is beautiful. And I appreciate that. And as complicated as the past summer was for me, the commitment to be able, when we are able to come back into the theaters in 2021 or in 2022 and be like, you said this, so let's make it happen. And also, great, you did that. Now, continue doing better, because this is a full journey. And so just continuing that forward thinking is at least how I am able to operate, and trying to continue breaking through those barriers, those gatekeeping whatevers that are oppressive structures designed to keep old white men in charge,
Leeanet, my question for you, because you are with the Shakespeare Theater, and you have a title, but you also operate in a very artistic way in terms of the wonderful gala that you produced or co-produced. And I want to talk to you, or I'd like you to address, in terms of breaking that glass ceiling. How does that, or how has it worked for you? There's a couple things, and you can unwrap any portion of this. There is a new artistic director. And so I'm not sure if you were working under the previous artistic director at all. Is there a difference in the feeling, the scope, how it's run? And then how did it lend itself to you being able to be a multi-hyphenated artist within the same company?
Ooh, okay, so So I came in at the end of Michael Kahn's, I don't want to say term because when he was retiring. So he was finishing, and then so when I came in, I knew that Simon was on his way in. And with Simon's first season that he announced, let me just start here. So I am the type of person that likes to think big and push for it and go for it. For many years, I think because of, we're talking about this shift that's happening right now and breaking the glass ceiling. I think for a long time, because of what we saw happen to many people who did try to step forward, and because of the systems that were set up, they weren't set up for success. And then that instilled fear in many. And so you're walking in this fear, and not only fear that's like, I'm afraid to do something, but fear that's set up in a certain structure or a certain order where, okay, I'm not going to go for that because that's not how the theater operates. Or I'm not going to try to direct something at the theater because that you never see people who are in administrative roles, even if they are creative, going to direct something. So I try to combat that within myself. I try to go for it as much as possible. And I think that's part of my responsibility also in connecting with the future generations and keeping us propelling forward. So when I stepped into the role that I was in at Shakespeare Theater Company, I was producing events, but I wasn't really doing the creative element because these were things that were all set. And the first thing I did was went to my supervisor and said, hey, can we change this up? And even if I got a no, I would continue to ask. And hey, we should do a festival. We should do this. We should do that. And then when certain things aligned, since it was already in motion, then you just step into it. And so Simon gave me the opportunity to do the festival, and I went all out, called my Howard people, called Ricky, called everybody I knew, all my artists, and, well, you saw the theater. I don't think the theater had ever looked like that before in history. So we had, art from Black artists, local Black artists on the walls. And, I really wanted to enrich the experience. So I think with the Baldwin Festival, and I had gotten wind that the person that was in the equity role may be transitioning out. So I had already put in word like, hey, I've done this work before. I have some ideas. I have some thoughts even before he left, and put in that word before it happened. So when it just started going. So I started doing things that reflected the role that I wanted before I had the title. Yeah. And so that's really how, okay, so now you're doing this and you're doing this, and now you're doing that and you're doing that, because I started doing it right away when I came in.
Which brings me to my next question, because that certainly does speak to your career at the Shakespeare Theater. But for both you and Taylor, did you become a multi-hyphenated artist by choice or by necessity? And I want to start by saying that so many times in our lives, I feel like we hear that you have to do one thing and stick to it. The idea you're a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So many things are said against the multifaceted person and naturally curious. So did you come upon some of these areas in your life as a necessity, or did you go, wow, I want to do this and I want to do this, and I'm not going to choose, I'm just going to do it? So Leeanet, can you speak to that for us?
Yes, I come from an amazing lineage of women who are multi-hyphenated. I have my mother who works in music therapy, who's also a musician, who's also a singer, who's also a producer and a dancer. So I grew up following her to all of her shows, and from her doing the producing, administrative, into all of that. And prior to that, with my grandmother, who was a minister and an author and a classical singer and a recording artist and an actor. And I saw them both succeed at these things. And I think that's what was important. I know when I was 4, my first recital, I said I wanted to be a veterinarian and a movie star. And, different type of hyphenation there, but it might have shifted a bit. But I think in my head, I always knew that I wanted to do those things. A big inspiration for me as a kid was Spike Lee, and I saw that he was acting in his own films, and he was producing, and he was directing, and I saw that, so I knew it was possible, and I had to just go in the order that I was led in.
Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both. At least in my relationship as a director and as a producer, because I always wanted to be a director and did it, so yay. And I learned how to produce because I was producing my own work, because I was devising and creating a lot of stuff. And, with the intention of working with people and figuring out like who I was as an artist, especially as I was like a year or two out of college. And I, wasn't as focused on productions or like, I wasn't working in a goal-oriented way. And so, it's like, how do you fill out applications where they're like, at the end of this, we would like to present something. I'm like, okay, cool. But like, you probably want people to be able to watch it, right? And I just want to be like, ideas, let's try it. So I ended up putting, self-producing a lot or some version of self-producing, and really found that I enjoyed it. And then when I started working with the movement is full of multi-hyphenate artists of color. Like that's kind of part of our mission and part of what we look for in artists are people who are like, I am all of these things. This residency or this application or this whatever is looking for me to do this. Looking for me to be a writer, but I want to write it and direct it, or I want to write it and be in it, or I want to choreograph, whatever the various combinations are. We wanted to be a space for that because we went out and looked and did not see the space, and I think that's a lot of how, many collectives or companies or what have you are formed. If you look out into the vast expanse of theater, for example, or the performing arts, which have existed for thousands of years, and you're like, but for me, no, okay, then I'll make my own. And so did I think that I would ever get to a place where I would feel comfortable producing, a main stage production or being part of a team that's producing like a Northeast tour of a major production? No. I was like, I don't know, I'll produce some shows in a black box, maybe with help, and it'll be $1,000 budget, and so I think one of the great things about being a multi-hyphenate artist is how you can surprise yourself, like of the thing that you think, if you go to school for theater or if you're in theater classes and they're like, well, what are you gonna, what's your like first thing before the first slash, and just that understanding that it can just be an addition rather than like I've got to put this to the side so I can do this. It's like you can do all of the things. And then it's also a necessity because if there are no directing gigs, but like somebody's like, help me produce this thing, I'm like, okay, sure. So it can vacillate in that sense. And it's always just, part of the artistic experience of just continuing to grow and learn and like meet people.
That's so beautiful, both of you. It's interesting because a tree has many branches, and an oak tree is an oak tree no matter how many branches it has. And so you all certainly have millions and millions and tens of millions of branches on your tree. Leeanet, I don't want to let this pass us because I want you to talk to us a little about this fashion branch of yours. I want to hear a little bit about this fashion branch, how that came to be, if you're still dabbling in it. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think people of color are just that, people of color. And there's something to be said about the fashion and the rhythm and what our colors bring to this nation. So talk to us a little bit about your fashion side.
Sure. I'm going to loop this around a little bit, but years ago, my mother and I brought in a young artist who was, she wanted to break into doing scene design and lighting design. And so we brought her in for a series we were doing at the Kennedy Center. And she became just super passionate about fashion and went to Paris and became the creative director for a top designer, Rick Owens. And I told her, I was like, you're in Paris, you need to find a way to get me there, because that's how networking works and connections work. And so they had a vision to fuse stepping with fashion. And so she reached out to my mother and I, and we quickly said yes. Like we didn't really know that much about what we were stepping into. We just did a quick Google search for Rick Owens, and yes. So I cast 40. My mother and I cast 40 women, and the beautiful thing is that many said, okay, so you've seen fashion shows before where you have entertainment and then you have the models walk down the runway. And for a good portion of the tailoring all the looks for us, and when I say looks, each piece that we were in was at least $10,000 a piece. So it was a beautiful experience, and it launched us into that. We were featured in Vogue and Elle and all the major magazines. So you see beautiful Black women of all shapes and all sizes on these magazines, being inducted into museums. And then we continued on with the company with a smaller cohort of the women, and we started doing collaborations with Woolrich and Lauryn Hill and other fashion brands and Adidas, and we did New York Fashion Week back to back. I think this was the first year we didn't do it because of COVID. So it just continued to propel. And many were saying, oh, well, you're in the fashion world now. It's new for you all. And my mom works in genealogy a lot and did history on our family, and found out that our family in North Carolina had a Black mill and would sell fabrics to the fashion districts back in the 1800s and early 1900s. So, you think you're in a place that's new, that, oh, well, you're just getting into this world. It's different for you, when your ancestors have been doing this work in fashion for hundreds of years. So we continue to do collaborations with fashion houses, and it's more so about the inclusivity of it and celebrating women of all shapes and sizes and fusing it with percussive dance. And I'm a tap dancer, so I do a mixture of stepping, tapping, gumboot, just using your body as your instrument, with an amazing group of women.
Wowzers. So with that, I'm going to stay on you for just one more moment, and then I have something for Taylor as well. If you had to pick a branch, which would be your priority branch? Which would be the branch that you would really want to be able to focus your attention on? And I will preface this by saying I hate when people say pick one to me, but I enjoy doing it to other people.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate for that right there. Well, here's the thing. I don't see them as branches. I see it as the tree. I'm a tree hugger. I'm just going to say that right now. I love hugging trees, and trees have amazing energy. and they send out so many different signals, and it's like millions and millions of signals to each other to protect each other. And I think that's something that's beautiful. So I don't see the tap dancing or the drumming or the working in social justice or writing as all these like separate things. I see them all as me, as the branch, and not as the branch, as the root of the tree. And so I think that one branch will have like tons of things on it, another branch will have tons of things on it. So I can't separate it like that, because it's all intertwined. When I sit down and write something, if I'm writing a script for television, if I'm writing a play, it's going to have all those things, all those hyphens infused within it. So I don't separate it. So yeah,
well said.
That's my answer.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much. And Taylor, for you, you talked about pushing against the traditional model, right? You talked about pushing against that. And almost all of the theater companies that you are or have worked with and are a part of deal with emerging artists, deal with breaking down norms, deal with under or marginalized artists. How does that shape your tree? And how do you see yourself moving forward, and how do you see your roots permeating this universe?
Yeah, that's a really beautiful question. Thank you. I think those choices have been mostly purposeful as much as possible. And it took me, I've been in New York for like almost 10 years now, and it took me all of that time to be able to curate and understand myself and what I was looking for and what I needed as an artist, and what I was looking for in the people that I was working with in the room. And then once I started developing and devising projects, the same project, 2 years later, we finally like have a thing that we can be like, oh yes, people should come see it. Then starting those relationships with theaters or producers, and making sure the values align across the board, both like with me to them and them to me, because it's one of the major sort of values that I hold is relational over transactional. So which I hope everyone holds as much as possible, and I'm sure everyone on this current Zoom holds. But focusing on building relationships with the people that I'm working with in whatever capacity, over it being like, oh, this is just a thing, or yeah, I'll do this for this one time because they're giving me X amount of money or whatever. Certainly there are those transactional relationships that just occur naturally, or something that I hope was relational turns out to be transactional because of life, because like people move, or they're just like, actually never mind. But my root of everything is collaboration and community, and that's hard sometimes, because as a director, which is such a solo job, like, which I'm sure you all know, that I even, or if something goes well and people are like, oh my gosh, you directed the heck out of that, like that was so great. And I'm like, thank you. Everyone contributed. Oh, and this person, they had that idea, and people are like, no, just take the compliment. I was complimenting you. You guided the ship. And I'm like, right. But like, we all made the ship and we all did that. And they're like, right. Okay. I get it, but also like, take your flowers. But it's hard for me, because I'm like, it's not who, like, I care about me. I have a lot of people who care about me, etc. But like, who cares about me? Like, it's all like my work and my energy is in service to the art or the work or the social change that like is being made. And I know that I participated in it, and that's that's usually enough for me. So it's a little bit of like getting the like individual understanding of how I am actually essential to life, rather than just being like, it is all of us. You know, if my roots were protecting another tree, I'd be like, we're all protecting each other, you know? But to actually go back to the question, something that really helped me was once I had at least a few of my own values that, you know, are always shifting, changing, what have you. But once I had a few of my own values, I then understood that in conversations with other collaborators and with theaters that I'm working with, that what values are like essential that we share. What are the ones where I'm like, it would be cool if you did like this, but whatever. And what are the like kind of deal breakers? Because I think especially like for myself as a biracial Black woman, like there's, I am by no means the most vulnerable person in the room, or if I am, then like that's that's a place I don't want to be in. You know, if like it's all of the privileges that I have, if I'm the least privileged person in a room, then like that is a room that is not interested in any kind of reconciliation, or at least not any reconciliation that I can provide. But it involved vulnerability and having open and honest conversations with the, you know, staff or administrators at the theater, saying like, this is how I work. If you you know, if you come in to see a rehearsal that I'm directing and you are really hoping to see me like taking charge and telling people where to go and how to move and what, you know, they should be doing, you're not going to see that. You're going to see us all sitting around and having a conversation about like, maybe this, you know, because that is my process. And there have been times where it's been hard in relationships with certain theaters where they have wanted something else. You know, maybe I'll get to go back, maybe I won't, but they understand where I'm coming from. And I understand what their priorities are, what they're looking for in, you know, whatever multi-hyphenate is my priority in that room.
Thank you so much. And I'm making an assumption here, this next question that I'm asking, and I want you to share with our young people a time. Prayerfully, there weren't more than just a time or a few, because I'm sure you've been the only one in the room before. Not only the only person of color, but one of the few women in the room. And share with us a time when your place in the room was not respected and how you navigated, if that has ever happened. I can't see that it hasn't, but I don't want students to think that you came to where you are and it was, you know, just like walking over a rainbow. Were there times that you really either had to walk away or stay and fight for your place in that room? And not just, we had the, in Hamilton, not just being in the room where it happens, because we are in the room where it happens, but we don't often have a seat at the table. So talk to us about being at that table and what it feels like when your voice is not heard and how you forge that, how you get to a resonance where your voice is heard.
So, okay, Deirdre, you're not playing no games tonight. Okay. So what I think of is I was with an organization, and here's the thing about that table, right? It's like, you know, you could be at the table, but there's all these different things that are happening in the table. There's the rank of the title, and then there's also what you're getting paid. And, you know, there are a lot of movements happening right now, and people, like Taylor mentioned, people are putting out the things that they're going to do. There's not a lot of talk about equitable pay and shifting these pay scales. So I have been with an organization in the past where I was having an experience with someone who was speaking to me as if I were a child. And first and foremost, I said, okay, well, maybe this is how they're talking to me. And so I said something. I brought up my case, and then I had somebody else in the same organization say, hey, I just want to check in if you're okay, because I know this person has a pattern. And I said, oh, they have a pattern. Okay, so the interesting part is that it's not always everybody that is at the table that is treating you a certain way. Sometimes it's just one person. And for me, I have to make the decision if, no matter what I'm going to say something, I'm going to speak up. But it's a matter if I want to fight and what I'm going to get at the end of the fight, and what toll the fight is going to take on me as a person. And so in that particular case, I brought up my case and then I left, because when I looked at what I was making, when I looked at the situations at the table, it wasn't worth it, honestly. You know, and so I made sure that progress was made and things were being pushed forward and that people were being held to task. But it's also a matter if I wanted to stay in that situation at that time and what it was doing to me mentally, and if it was worth it. If once I did this, what was going to come off of it? What has been their pattern as a whole? So yeah, for me, it's just really taking in the whole situation and examining it, because you have to realize how much stress plays. I think now people are really realizing that now that we're in this quarantine situation, we're finding out how much self-care we need. Like, self-care is a job to itself. And we don't really, like, wait, I need to do this every morning. I need to do this every night. I need to do this in the afternoon. Like, it's a whole thing, and you need to be able to take care of yourself. So making sure that you're able to do that in the situation that you decide to take on.
That was so important. Thank you for adding that. Taylor?
Yes, just echoing. Echoing. I mean, I've been very fortunate in that I recognized pretty early that I don't do well in situations where I don't feel comfortable or safe or appreciated. And I also, over the last, I would say 3 years, I've gotten better about speaking up for myself or speaking up on behalf of people who are being microaggressed or against, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But for a long time, I was like, I'm too scared, or like, I'm too vulnerable, or like, I don't want to do that work, you know, because it's a lot, as you know, as we know of like women and women of color, like you can't do it sometimes. It's like the self-care of like, I'm just trying to make sure that like, I'm okay. I really don't have time to make sure you know why what you said was terrible. I wish you would just know. And so in the times where I have been in those situations, or I should say, the times that come to my memory are further in the past. So they're, you know, a few years after I got out of college, and when I was in the position of needing to take mostly whatever jobs would come to me, both just to build up my resume, and if it was like fortunate enough to be paid, to have to take that money, because that's a thing. It's just very hard. And like I said, because I wasn't in a place where I felt comfortable speaking up in the moment, I really just turned inward and focused on what I needed in order to be able to make it through. And, you know, sometimes that was just like telling myself before rehearsal, like, it's only 3 hours, you know, or sometimes it's identifying the like one person that you can relate to in that room or that space and being like, they're going to be there. And like, I'm going to look across the room and like, we'll just know, and that'll be enough. And of course, these are not ideal things. Like ideally it would be an equitable space where people can feel comfortable bringing their needs. And I think, thank goodness, we're in the future from, you know, when I was 20. And we're continuing to get closer and closer, but also have so much further to go. And so, yeah, so my answer to the question is I basically just avoided it because for me, no opportunity was fantastic enough for me to go through the stress, because that's me, you know, like, like there are people who like I know and love who are able to take it in and who have those, have their processing and have those communities that help them get through it. And like, I was like, oh, I just don't have to deal with it. And I can just make the art I want and like do it in a little black box. Like, cool. So that was me.
That's so wonderful. You know, it's such a, we talk about, you know, taking the job because you need to take the job. The reality is you have to eat. But within that, with both of you saying, you have to figure out how do you preserve yourself. And it's something that I've come to understand and forgive my vernacular when I say it this way is the job don't love you. So if you are taking a job that causes you to challenge who you are, and that is abusive, either verbally or emotionally, that job doesn't love you. And no one can take your art away from you. No one, I don't believe anyone can define your future for you. You define your future, you speak it into existence. So there are people that will lead you to believe that they can ruin your career. Yeah, okay, good luck with that. No one can ruin your career. It's just a matter of you making sure that you align yourself with other people who have your best interest at heart. And no one should be teaching you by denigrating you. No one outside of yourself and your higher power or your higher being or whatever you speak to, you know, can tell you what you are or who you are. You know, I really don't like the school of thought where people are saying you're not an actor, you're not an artist, you're not this, maybe you should be this. That's not a person you want to be in the room with. And if you tend to be in a room with that person, tune them out. Recognize who you are, know who you are, and move forward in your art. Being an artist is a gift. Artists are healers. And more than anything, the world needs to be healed right now. And art brings everything into focus. It brings it into, Ricky Ramone had this thing. Ricky, you might have to pop in here. You called it was it a laser focus or a soft focus? Something where you hone in. And I remember my students kept saying, Mr. Ramone said.
Yeah, you're right. Good memory. It's my soft focus. I learned it from, and I'm sure the panelists know, I learned it from my mentor, Ann Bogart. Remember, I learned under her. So it's part of the viewpoints training, having this laser focus, soft focus, where you focus on something, but you could see everything else and how it's moving in your peripheral vision. And so, although you have laser focus, you are also aware of everything around you, even what's behind you, what you can't see.
That's awesome. I think we're opening up for questions now. Am I correct in that? And thanks to both of our panelists who are just so insightful and so skilled. I don't want to say so smart because, like, why wouldn't they be? But just like forgers. And I want to say this, that today we have a couple of women in our nation who are worth mentioning. One of them is our dearly departed Cicely Tyson, who just broke so many barriers down. And the first time, if you have not seen this movie, look it up, Sounder. Yes, just just an homage to her career, we also have Dr. Jill Biden. Yes, doctor, who is the first lady of this nation and who is going to keep her job, something different, thinking outside of the box. And we also have our former first lady, the one and only Michelle, right? Michelle Barack Obama. And I just say Barack Obama because I think of the two of them as one, the way they work to change the world, but also how fierce she is. And so I think it's worth mentioning. And Stacey Abrams, so many women out there. I feel like Joy Reid right now, and I want to start, getting my my rhythm in there. But we are going to open it up to questions. I think if I'm not wrong, they can either turn their mics on or type in the chat. So now would be the time.
Yes, and Deirdre, we have 3 questions in the chat box.
We do?
I mean, in the Q&A box.
Where's that Q&A box? Oh, look, I see it. All right. Hi, Adrienne. Adrienne is a 3rd-year acting major at HU, her question is for Leeanet. Sorry, I'm reading. How was your process from student to working in the field? And did you make connections while you were in school to help you catapult? I like that word. Come on now, in becoming a working artist.
Yeah, so I started performing professionally in the dance world in particular when I was a teenager. So while I was in school, I would be doing concerts and performances and working professionally. In my senior year at Howard, my mother made me go to this party. I said I didn't really want to go because they were asking me to perform. And I used to have this thing where like, I'm not going to an event if I have to perform at it. But don't ask. But so I went, and there was a scout from the show Stomp there. And I had friends in the past who had auditioned for the show, and they had callbacks, and they got into the show a lot later. So I went to an audition, and 2 weeks later, they called me and cast me in the show. I didn't have any callbacks, nothing. And so I went to my professors and said, hey, I had one class left. This is not a common thing at Howard University, so don't say that I recommended this. But I went to my professors and said, I've been cast in this show. What can I do? And I had to do like a 60-page presentation on tech. My last class was a tech class because you know how we all put off those tech classes until the end. But I had a tech class and had to do a huge presentation and on the technical aspects of Stomp while I was performing in the show. So I finished school. Oh, got dogs in the background. I finished school while I was performing in Stomp. And then from there, I stayed in New York and kept working.
Oh, that's awesome. So here's one. This is a good one. So we're talking about being multi-hyphenated artists, but graduate programs are specialized. They're just it just is what it is. What would you recommend to someone who wants to go into grad school? How would they come about deciding what they should focus on, understanding that they are already multi-hyphenated and aspire to be a multi-hyphenated artist?
I have not been to grad school, so Leeanet, if you have some like specific insight, you can share that. But I have an opinion.
School is such an interesting thing in the field of the arts, and it really depends on what you want to do and how you want to approach the craft, because you, of course, have seen people who have been very successful without getting any degrees in the field. So you really have to decide what you want to do and how you want to do it. I teach a theater history class at the ACA. And I think what's unique about their program is that it's in 1 year. So in one concentrated year, you come out with your master's. And I think that's rare. Usually it's 3-year, program, but So I think you need to look at the time frame, and you need to look at what you want to do and decide how you want to approach the craft, because I really think it's a decision that has many layers to it.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, kind of like it's been said about any position, like there's always room, there's always flexibility, and if there's not room, then make the room, as much as possible. Just, like Leeanet said, like go ask, and then if they say no, okay, cool, and then you ask again. And I think also, again, I have not been to grad school, nor have I applied, so who knows? But I know many people who have gone, and actually one of my very good friends, who is a multi-hyphenate artist, decided to do a performance art master's, because it got at least closer to all of the different things he was interested in, because there was like a business component of, learning more about producing, or just how to sustain yourself as like, I am my own thing. So I'm branded and selling myself, but also making art because I love it. And there were also, just like trainings and fellowships with growing in artistry. So, it's, again, echoing just what has been said, but I think it's about making the space and finding the people who also want to do the different things, because multi-hyphenate artists are everywhere. I think everyone has at least one hyphen. We just have to find it.
Thank you so much for that. I believe this is Janae. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Janae Cisse. I have Cisses in my family, Janae. Maybe we're related. Janae's question is, what is your advice to someone who is new in the world of theater and would like to explore it to see if it is a career path for them? Where is a good place to start?
Well, I think that depends on what you want to do in the theater. We are often first introduced to the theater through acting, because that's what we see, that's what's presented. But there are so many facets from, we rarely see the directors, rarely know the directors. So you have the directors, you have the stage managers, you have the producers. And if it's a theater company, you have the artistic directors. So I think the first step is getting well versed in how the theater operates and knowing it from the inside out and the outside in, because theater has many different branches, but there are so many different areas within theater. And if you know all of them to start off with, then you're putting yourself ahead of the game.
Taylor, do you want to respond to that question?
Agreed. I mean, I was like, yep, that's it. I guess I would just add, like, in this current time where, everybody's doing their best, we are making the beautiful art that is theatrical and is also, but the like thing we're all used to that existed for like the thousands of years, it's different right now. So I think that, it's also a time to reach out to people, to reach out to artists. Like, you might not always get a response. And if you reach out, have something specific that you want to know about. And, don't take more than 30 minutes of people's time unless you like really start vibing and you can talk for hours. But I've had, I'm always happy to talk to young people, especially who are just starting out, who have these questions. Maybe what I say is not going to be helpful, but like, it's useful to hear the different experiences, because there is no one track or one path for any of the varying branches of theater or the performing arts or art as a whole. Like we've been saying, you can come to any of and all of these things from so many different ways. And so while we're all, well, not everyone is sitting in their apartment, but while at least I am sitting in my apartment, if people email me through my website, I'm like, all right, what are your questions? So, now I think is the chance to at least get some insight, so that then when everything is opening back up, hopefully you have at least the seeds of those beginning relationships.
Thank you so much for that, ladies. Leeanet, this question is for you. How have you been so successful advocating for your artistry while working in administrative positions? Do you have any tips for other administrators looking to showcase their artistic skills at their workplace?
Is it overworking? No. I think, I think everything makes room for itself. So I don't limit myself. So, just because I take on an administrative role within a theater, I don't stop looking for other things in artistically, or I don't stop, even if I have to write late at night, I don't stop writing. I don't stop reaching out and connecting and networking. I keep things moving on that end because it's important, because you can just get wrapped up in one thing. It's a lot, like the administrative roles and the role that I have currently, it's very demanding. But with that being said, I think if you know that you still want to continue in your career in other ways, that you do so. that you don't stop. Don't get in the mindset that, oh, because I'm doing this, it's over for me on that end. No, it's still available. You can still do it. You can do those things. I could have been a veterinarian and a movie star. It is possible. We're amazing people, and if we take out that fear, if we take out those boundaries, and whatever people say, oh, if you do this, you can't do that, like Deirdre was saying earlier, if you take that out, you'll be amazed at the things that you can do at once.
That is so very lovely. So Taylor, I'm going to throw this question to you, or hand this question to you. Sorry, don't mean to use abusive language. As a multi-talented artist, how do you cultivate work-life balance these days? And what are some of your rituals? Which we've already pretty much come to the conclusion that it is so important to deal with self-care. So what are your rituals in taking care of yourself?
Yes. So I think the thing that I'm able to do mostly every day is I have a little altar in my living room. So whenever I finally get out of bed, or whenever I remember, honestly, I just go in and light my candles. And currently a lot of it is centered around, healing and peace and all of that for pandemic and for racialized violence, but also just setting an intention for the day and, maybe for the year, if I can think that expansively. So that's something that's a thing I'm able to do consistently, because I'm like, I know I will go in my living room. Everything else depends. I think in relation to my artistic practice, I'm finding now I need even more prep time, in understanding the work or whatever that I'm going to be going into, or understanding what I was supposed to have done for my theater company before our meeting. And then also taking additional prep time to just check in with myself and see how I'm actually doing and how I will be able to show up in whatever virtual space I'm about to be in. And I did that in my, before March 2020 as well, just in different ways. And it's something that I think, obviously will continue to happen once more of my jobs are in person again. But I think it will just be shifted because being around human energy just means something different to me now. Like it's been one of the things it is one of the things that drew me first to the theater when I was, in a high school freshman, and continues to draw me in even now, like even in this conversation. And I don't know where I was going with that, but thank you all for being here. And I think another ritual that I have in these spaces is, just the way that Deirdre started this conversation of like, how are you? Everybody share however much you want to share. Let us know where you are. And, if that takes 5 minutes of the meeting, great. If that takes 30 minutes of the rehearsal, like that's what it takes. And again, these are like, this is a practice that existed before, that exists now, that will continue to exist, and gets a different response from everybody. Some people are like, some members of my company are like, can we just not, like, how I'm doing. I was just texting you. And I'm like, I just want to make the space. I just want there to be space, one space where you can process if you need it, So I think like those are just some of the things, again, just making there's so much that we're all processing all the time because we're so accessible via so much that like I just like to make a little bubble for 5 seconds to be like, right, but look inside your heart and tell me what's going on, or don't, but like at least you'll know.
Yeah. Leeanet, I have a question for you in your role as the Director of Equity and Enrichment, because that is that's a heavy burden. That is people are standing on your shoulders. People are looking to you for change. People are looking to you for answers. And we do understand that the theater where you work is not heavily populated with brown people in positions of power or leadership or senior staff positions. So how do you navigate being the person that people are kind of looking at you going, okay, you have the answers, and how do Black women think? And what are we doing wrong, and how do we fix it? How do you navigate that, and how are you finding peace for yourself being the shoulders upon which people are standing?
I think there's two different aspects. There's the aspect of being that voice for the company, and then there's also the aspect of, even before I was in this role, people came to me, other staff members, the people that were working with the organization, with issues or with things that, and I thought to myself, wow, you just came straight to me and said this, but that's not even my position. And I would be like, well, there is a head of EDI and so forth over there. But I think the type of person that I am, I automatically said, okay, let me see what I can do, and let me see what's going on here. Like that, this shouldn't be the case. Where the company is right now, since the work started before this, since there was an EDI committee in place before this, and the fact that we have a new artistic director that came in with a season that had the first 2 Black playwrights in his first season, and that was the first time there had ever been any Black playwright in the history of the company featured in the company. So I think due to that, it's made this work a bit easier, but there's still a lot to do. I appreciate the fact that I haven't had resistance really, and I kind of, because I read the Angela Davis story in my grandmother's library when I was 10 years old, and so my work creatively has always aligned with pushing boundaries and breaking the mold and making sure that people are seen. It doesn't feel like a burden. And if it does start to feel stressful or anything like that, I know how personally I can go hug a tree, I can go meditate, I can go do what I need to do to let the energy and get myself back to where I need to be to think clearly, because if if I don't have the answer, then I know I have the resources to get the right answers and to know the right path ahead. So it feels like something I've been doing for so long. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't feel heavy. It just feels like I'm ready to do it. Like, let's go. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And thank you so much for taking the charge on that. So I have two wonderful questions. And so I'm going to throw both of the questions out there, and then whoever answers one, then the other one will answer the other one. So the first question, and this is from Shara. I hope I'm saying that wrong. If I am not right, but if I'm saying it wrong, please forgive me. It is not my intent to mispronounce your name. Wondering, what were some of the challenges you've overcome or tips you've picked up when advocating for yourself as a multi-hyphenated artist? That's question number one. And then question number two is, are there any projects that you have tackled virtually during the pandemic?
Leeanet, I feel like you should take Ashara's question. Well, you've got so many hyphenates for people to try to come for you.
Oh man, I thought you turned your mic on because you were taking question one. I was like, yes.
I mean, I can, but I feel like you'll have juicier stories.
Deirdre, give me the question one more time, real quick.
What were some of the challenges you've overcome and or tips you picked up when advocating for yourself?
So in my early years at Howard University, we had a professor, that Henrietta Edmonds, that would always say business show. That it's not show business, it's business show. So I think most of the hurdles, honestly, that I have had to face was the business and knowing the business and making, because I want to be the artist and just express and do my thing. And then if I didn't know early on, not knowing the business as I should, or, because we're not really taught business, in theater arts majors. So I think that has been it. The business show part is getting well-versed in contracts and well-versed in how all these things look until you get to a point where you can afford the lawyer and the manager and agent and all these people that can do it for you. So I think my biggest hurdles have been on that end, because I've been focused on only the show part, or have been focused on only the art part. There have been hurdles in connection to being a woman in the field, but the way that I operate is, it's just a no. It's just no. And there's been opportunities that I have missed. There have been opportunities that I did not go forward with, that were big opportunities because it put certain things in question. And that was just since I've seen women forge ahead in my own family without having to make those particular sacrifices, I knew that I didn't need to do that. So I think, I would say the business part. And I feel like that was the question about the hurdles and the challenges and multi-hyphenated. I haven't really had, as far as the multi-hyphenated part, again, I just go with the flow. So as the opportunities come, if I see something, I don't really say, oh, I can't do that. There was a time where I would say that because I was living within the boundaries and the rules that we all see, where if you're a director, then you can't do this, or if you're, if you haven't done this type of work before, then you can't do it now, or whatever the case is. So I try my best to break down those so I can just forge ahead and go where I want to creatively.
Thank you so much. So Taylor, so you will be talking about what projects you've done virtually. And then I do have one more, and I hope we will have I love this. So I put it in the chat. So Taylor, when you're finished, I really want to throw this one last question to you, because I think it's just a delightful question.
Yeah, is it Jordan's question? I feel like Leeanet just answered it, of like, nobody can tell you no, least of all yourself. Like, if you don't know what hyphenate, like, just try all the stuff and be like, ugh, great, yes, good. That's what I did. Just like try stuff out and then you'll figure it out. And also understand, ideally, life is long and you'll want to do a bunch of different things, like theater and non, like get a regular job for a while. It's fun. It's great. Like I worked at a museum in an office for 4 years and was directing kind of, and I was like, this is great. So that's I think the combined answer to that, because that's a great question. So quickly, yes, I have directed virtually between from April through now, and I've done directed a range of things from internal workshops to a full Zoom production where all the actors had green screens and there were editors who were editing all the footage together. And I felt medium to great about all of them. Medium to great because I was like, wow, I'm so glad to be doing this and working on beautiful plays or beautiful pieces. And also I'm devastated that we are not together, because that's what I'm here for. And what I have found is most useful for me is working on projects that are designed for the medium that they're in, where they can succeed. And sometimes, there are projects where you can do the Zoom and edit it together and all of that. But I've really started drifting more towards audio plays or actual live Zoom experience that's a bit that the purpose is we're all on Zoom together. It's weird. We can acknowledge we're going to freeze. We're going to do all that. Who cares? Yeah, I could go on about that for a long time, but I won't. But the answer is yes, I've done those projects to varying degrees and will continue to do them. So look out for them.
Thank you so much, ladies. This has been wonderful and insightful. And I love your hyphens. I love you. I love the energy that you brought to this room. And I love the wisdom that you've shared with our young artist. I have the pleasure right now of handing over the remainder of the program to Eric Ruffin. And, just saying Eric Ruffin's name brings so much joy to my heart, because we've been a pair for a very long time. I've been directed by Eric. I've been a neighbor with Eric. We've had movie night and family night with our children. And Eric has just been such a great voice of wisdom for me as I was becoming and emerging into this multi-hyphenated person. He has a lot to do with that. So without any further ado, I am going to turn it over to the one and the only Eric Ruffin.
You trying to make me cry over here. That was so sweet. Well, I am here to give closure to it all. But how? What I heard tonight just warms my heart, and I'm so grateful that you were so generous and so courageous to share with the young people tonight and with anyone that was with us. I have to give some thanks. I have to thank you, Ricky. I have to thank you, Kristen. I have to thank you, Allison. I have to thank you, Deirdre, Leeanet, and Taylor, and all of those who have attended. This Spotlight series is birthed out of a love ethic. I think that we as humans, we eat, we sleep, we procreate, we eliminate, and we share information so that others can thrive, can benefit. And what better conversation to have right now than the future is female? It's from women that everything is birthed. And now we're looking for new ways of expressing our art, figuring out who is represented and how they're represented, birthing new models of governance. And we just gave you just gave golden nuggets. And I'm so appreciative, and everyone that's been with us tonight is so appreciative. This Spotlight series is the second of our Spotlight series. The first was with Maria Goyanes, Artistic Director of Woolly Mammoth, and with Raymond Caldwell, the Artistic Director of Theater Alliance, both here in Washington, D.C. And I am putting in the chat the link to that YouTube. But if you go to the theater department's YouTube channel, you can see that Spotlight and a number of other offerings for the future. Again, thank you so very much, everyone. Have a good night.